We're going to give it another minute just so everyone knows, in case somebody's late, I can admit them through the waiting room. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if I can have somebody nod just to give me the okay that you can hear me okay at this time. Perfect, thank you. It appears there isn't anyone else waiting in the waiting room. We have what looks like every council member present. So the time is now 7:31 and it appears, yep, one more moment. It appears now that everyone for tonight's council meeting is on the conference bridge. So I'd like to call this meeting to order. Again, it's 7:31. If you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance at this time. Pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, now at this time, I would like for each council member to unmute and respond to the clerk when she calls roll. If Judy could call roll.
Cannon.
Here.
Budmetz.
Present.
O'Brien.
Here.
Veneziano.
Here.
Bessesi.
Here.
Diastis.
Present.
Sunoika.
Here.
With 7 present and nobody absent, there is a quorum this evening. Therefore, members who are on this council bridge are reminded that these proceedings are being recorded for current and future broadcast over the city's media outlets. Just want to mention to the members who are joining us, and you should know that you will be afforded the opportunity for public comment as long as you've provided your contact credentials and the subject matter for which you do want to speak about before the deadline, which is also noted at the top of this evening's agenda. I also want to remind council that we should all remain muted, but use hands when making motions or requesting to speak, again, for order. We've been doing this long enough now, I think we're pretty much used to the program. Moving on, we have 2 sets of minutes that we have to approve before we get underway today. The 2 sets, the first one is the March 31st, 2020 Committee of the Whole meeting. Is there a motion to approve these minutes? Thank you, Alderman Sunoika. Thank you, Alderman Diastis. I'll wait a moment to remove those hands, but are there any corrections, additions, or deletions by show of hand? Alderman Cannon, your hand is now up. Do you have a correction, addition, or deletion? Your hand is now down.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. No worries. Seeing none, the question is, shall the minutes be approved? All those in favor, please unmute and say aye at this time.
Aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. It sounded unanimous, and so the ayes do have it. The next set of minutes is for the April 14th, 2020 City Council meeting. Is there a motion by show of hand? Thank you, Alderman Sunoika. Thank you again, Alderman Diastis. By show of hand, are there any corrections, additions, or deletions to these minutes? Seeing none, the question is, shall the minutes be approved? Will all those in favor unmute and say aye?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? The ayes have it, and those city council meeting minutes are approved. There is no room or no motion to deviate at this time. As far as the mayor's report goes, of course, you know, we're following information closely from both the IML and from the Northwest Municipal Conference. in addition to what the governor is saying directly, but they've been handing out messages and waiting to hear how the city should comply with any of the safety and well-being for all the residents as things progress coming toward May 1st. So of course, updates will be soon to come. In addition to that, we do have some better information on community level. The Rolling Meadows Show Choir is participating in a performance scheduled at 3 p.m. this Saturday. It's an online performance. It's going to start at 10 a.m. There are 5 middle school performers. There are also 7 women's choir performances. The Rolling Meadows group specifically will compete against 3 other schools in their group. They will perform in order to go to the finals, and the last performance is being held at 6:45. Anyone who's interested in watching the New Directions, the Rolling Meadows Choir, they can follow that on the website, which is www.showchoirs.org. This will be in the meeting minutes after this meeting for anyone else, and I believe we'll have this posted on our digital signage as well. So maybe take a break from the other monotony we have and watch New Directions, our Rolling Meadows Choir, perform. With that, are there any other ward reports by show of hand? Okay. Seeing none at that time, then we will move ourselves along to the section of the meeting that is open to the public for 20 minutes. Members of the public at this time who want to speak will be afforded 5 minutes. And in order to secure the rights of those residents to the city for a fair and just representation, the elected officials, in order of a dignified forum for which to conduct the city's business, no person shall be allowed to engage in any activity that will disturb or disrupt the orderly proceedings of this council. Any person who wishes to address the city council at this time for public comment shall be permitted to speak only upon recognition of the presiding officer, and such person shall adhere to the following provisions. Each person is addressing the city council shall state their name for the record. There is 20 minutes allotted for this time, and each speaker is allotted 5 minutes out of that. Commentary shall be directed to the presiding officer unless the presiding officer permits the individual to address the council members or city officers directly. And of course, lastly, profanity shall not be used in any form or fashion. So at this time, I do have 3 names on the list, and the first name as it appears is Megan Golick. Megan, if you're on the line, you can unmute yourself now, and if you're on by the phone, press *6 to unmute. We do have others in the waiting room that are coming in now. I'm not sure if Megan is one of them. Megan Golick, if you are available, the floor is yours.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Did you hear anything I said?
No.
I do apologize. I will start over.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, City Council members. My name is Megan Golick, and I live in the 4th Ward. I am here to speak about the Emergency Family Assistance Program. First, I would like to applaud the City Council for working to help Rolling Meadows residents during this unprecedented time. I would like to offer amendments to the current resolution and ask the Council to consider allocating $100,000 to the fund to fund the program in order to find an appropriate balance between the quantity of and the impact on program recipients. My husband and I are the kitchen coordinators of St. Colette's PAD site. We serve roughly 40 to 50 men, women, and families experiencing homelessness as part of Journeys the Road Home's rotating overnight shelter program. The average length of stay in the shelter system is 50 nights. This statistic is not a national average. This statistic is specific to the Northwest suburbs. So this is the lived experience of our neighbors. The truth is that suburban homelessness is incredibly diverse. I've fed an 8-month-old baby, hugged a woman in her 20s undergoing cancer treatment, and talked profit and loss statements with a guest who held a master's degree, all in the basement of St. Colette. These individuals will all experience the traumas of homelessness differently, but I believe that their paths could have been greatly altered, and those 50 nights of traveling between churches could have been avoided if they had been fortunate enough to receive one-time financial support and been connected to resources. Hardships with employment and housing insecurities are 2 of the biggest contributing factors to our neighbors experiencing homelessness. COVID-19 has caused unemployment to soar, and while current policies are halting evictions, I predict that we will see an unprecedented number of neighbors struggling to make rent and mortgage payments when deferments have concluded and 4 or more months of payments become due all at once. Being prepared for the surge will help residents in Rolling Meadows stay in Rolling Meadows, keeping the place that they call home. And when this surge comes, I believe residents will need more than the current $500 maximum housing benefit. 2-bedroom apartments, for reference, at the Preserve of Woodfield and Willow Bend rent for around $1,400 a month, and the median homeowner is likely paying around $1,800 a month between property taxes and 4% on a mortgage of a $250,000 home. So based on those numbers, I would recommend increasing the housing benefit cap to $2,000 per household. And as the needs of residents are unique and each deserve their own dignity, I feel the category limit for miscellaneous should be increased from $200 to $1,000 for a total maximum benefit that wouldn't be able to exceed $2,500 per household, just to keep us within some rounded numbers. And I do understand that there would be additional documentation for IRS purposes once a benefit exceeds $600, but I feel this additional paperwork shouldn't get in the way of developing a program that will be meaningful for our residents. Anecdotally, I would like to add the small business I work for once 1099 to balloon artist. So I'm confident the city could prepare the necessary paperwork to help our families in need. While a good start, I feel the current proposal would only provide a Band-Aid that would barely be non-adhesive, instead of a meaningful act of charity that will keep our neighbors safe at home. I would like you to take a moment to consider your own living expenses, and as you do that mental math, I think you'll see that $2,500 is not an extravagant number. Increasing the fund from $5,000 to $100,000 is a big ask, but such an increase is necessary if the council wants to see and create a program that will substantially impact our community. During this time of crisis, this is what our tax dollars should be doing, helping our neighbors meet their basic needs. In future years, I think this program could be expanded and modeled after popular employee assistance programs, and that could be funded independently by community donations or an opt-in in the water bill tax or something similar. But in the mindset of a global pandemic, I really feel that this should be funded generously by the city's budget. So I thank you for your time today and appreciate your consideration.
Thank you for sharing your position and some of those facts and anecdotes. The next name on the sign-in sheet is Maggie Trevor. Maggie, if you're on the line, unmute by *6 via phone or just unmute using your computer's options.
Yes, I just unmuted. I actually had emailed the city clerk to pull my name from the list.
Okay.
I spoke at the committee of the whole, and I think my comments are in the record. I can repeat them very quickly. I just wanted to remind people of the history of this program. My mother ran this program for several decades. It goes back to the 60s. It was a critical part of the safety net, and as Megan said so eloquently, it can do a lot of good to keep people in their homes in times of crisis. And I just wanted to urge you to ramp up this program in the time of crisis, and also to address the eligibility criteria to make them non-discriminatory. Thank you.
Thank you. To that point, then, that brings us to the conclusion. The other individual is noted as well as removing their name from the list. So that now brings us on to the next item, which is not pending ordinances in, because there are no pending ordinances. So this moves us to the consent ordinances. The consent ordinances in for first reading consist of 3 items, items A through C, and staff is requesting a waiver of the first reading for item C. So that leaves items A and B. Does any alderman wish to remove item A or B from the consent agenda for ordinances by show of hands? Okay. Seeing none, then the chair declares it in order for one motion to consider the 2 ordinances in one motion without debate.
Sorry.
Oh,
I have my hand up, Mayor. Mr. Mayor,
I'd like to be faster on the draw. Go
I
ahead.
did. It was kind of flashing. I'd like to pull item A, please.
Okay. So I will take these individually, beginning with A. Line item A is ordinance number 20-00, amend chapter 20, traffic of the Code of Ordinances to prohibit parking on Arbor Drive. Alderman Veneziano, you pulled this. Can I get a motion from you? And is there a second to follow up Alderman Veneziano's first? Thank you, Alderman Sonoyka. Discussion starts with you, Alderman Veneziano.
Thank you. So I'm hoping that staff or maybe Chief Nowacki can help me understand this. Is in our notes, it said staff recommends that it's in the city's best interest to prohibit the parking on Arbor Drive, but it really doesn't tell us why it's in our best interest. So I would really like some clarification as to why it's in the city's best interest and the residents in that area.
Chief, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Alderman. The ordinance was passed over 10 years ago, allowing parking on Arbor Drive. That was obviously prior to my time with Rolling Meadows. But my understanding was there were 2 additional apartment complex buildings. There was a lot of overcrowding in that area, and I guess the parking could not handle it on the private property for the apartment complex. So they devised a permit system to park on Arbor Drive. Since that time, the 2 buildings, as I said, have been removed. And then right now, if you drive down there, Arbor Drive is basically being used as a long-term storage because a lot of those cars are just being stored there. There's trailers, all kind of vehicles. There's issues in the wintertime when vehicles aren't moved off the road, causing issues with snow plowing. And a lot of individuals are actually parking on Arbor Drive and then going into the apartment complex, whether they're living or visiting, which they do not have permission to because they're not allowed to park in the parking lot. They don't have the permit parking, and their vehicles will be towed. So there's been a lot of issues. The new property management had asked if that parking could be removed. They put in some additional parking, and I think they're also working on installing some other parking for visitors and guests in that lot. So there really is no longer a need for Arbor Drive. And like I said, it is pretty much a storage area. It's an eyesore. Some undesirable individuals do park there and then either live or visit in the complex, causing other issues. So I hope that answers your question you had.
Yes, thank you.
Is there any further discussion from anybody else on the council? Alderman Sonoyka, your hand is up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to also state for the record that I reached out to the Preserve at Woodfield to talk with the manager or the management team. I haven't received a response yet, but it's been a weekend, so we'll have time before the second reading on May 12th to discuss this if there's any additional information that the management team can provide for us aside from this letter. I haven't received anything from my residents in that area with that complex being in Ward 7. So at this time, there has been no resident backlash or any other perspective as to why this shouldn't pass at this time. So I will be voting in favor of this ordinance.
Thank you, Alderman Sonoyka. Any other members of the council wish to chime in on discussion at this time? I'll give it one more second, see if I missed something. Okay, seeing none, the question is, shall the ordinance be moved forward for second reading? Will the council please unmute so the clerk can call roll?
Bessesi.
Yes.
Diastis.
Yes.
Sonoyka.
Yes.
Cannon.
Yes.
Budmats.
Yes.
O'Brien.
Yes.
Veneziano.
Yes.
That makes 7 in favor and 0 opposed. This ordinance does move forward for second reading. This now brings us to ordinance number 20-00, amend Chapter 2, Administration of the Code of Ordinances, amend aldermanic term limits to 2 consecutive 4-year terms. Is there a motion to approve this ordinance? Thank you, Alderman Veneziano. Thank you, Alderman O'Brien. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, the question is, shall the ordinance be moved forward for second reading? Will the clerk please call the roll and unmute at this time?
Diastis,
Yes.
Sunoika,
Yes.
Cannon,
Yes.
Bud Matts,
Yes.
O'Brien,
Yes.
Veneziano,
Yes.
Bessesi,
Yes.
7 in favor and none opposed. This ordinance too moves forward for second reading. Now this brings us down to item C, again, where staff is asking for a waiver of the first reading for item C, so this ordinance can be approved immediately. Is there an alderman willing to make this motion for waiving the first reading of this ordinance? Thank you, Alderman Sonoyka. Thank you, Alderman Veneziano. Thank you for everyone else showing the hands too. Is there any discussion on waiving this first reading? Seeing none, the question is, shall the ordinance be moved forward for second reading? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Sunoika,
Yes.
Cannon,
Yes. Mr. Mayor, I thought this was the second reading.
This is the motion to push it to the second, to waive the first
Sorry.
reading.
I
That's okay.
misunderstood. Sorry.
It's okay.
Bud Matts,
Yes.
O'Brien,
Yes.
Veneziano,
Yes.
Bessesi,
Yes.
Diastis,
Yes.
With 7 in favor and none opposed, the council does waive the first reading. Again, this is ordinance number 20-17 to approve, confirming, and extending the state of emergency within the city of Rolling Meadows. Is there a motion to approve the second reading? Thank you, Alderman Diastis. Thank you, Alderman Sonoyka. Is there any discussion on this item? Alderman Cannon, your hand is up, down? Okay. Tricky. Seeing none, the question is, shall the ordinance be moved forward for final approval? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Cannon,
Yes.
Bud Matts,
Yes.
O'Brien,
Yes.
Veneziano,
Yes.
Bessesi,
Yes.
Diastis,
Yes.
Sunoika,
Yes.
With 7 in favor and none opposed, this ordinance is approved. This now brings us to new business, and the new business is to approve the payment of bills on warrant for April 28th, 2020. Is there, by show of hands, a motion to approve this warrant? Thank you, Alderman O'Brien. Thank you, Alderman Bud Matts. Is there any discussion by show of hand? Alderman Bud Matts, your hand is back up. Is that for discussion?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Yeah, take it away.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In looking through the warrants, there's payments tonight for the Firehouse Station 15 and Station 16. In reviewing this, I noticed that we're spending the contingency money on station number 15, and that in both cases, Wegman has increased the amount of their portion of the contract beyond what was originally bid by them. And so I asked about this. I sent an email to Barry, and I didn't get a response until about an hour ago. And so I have more questions as to why we're spending the contingency funds. I understand that originally there was a budget amount, and we've used all of that up on station number 15, but now we're using up the contingency funds. So I'd like to postpone the payment on both fire stations until the next meeting, if possible.
Okay, is there, with that by way, I'm assuming you're making a motion to postpone this?
Yes,
And
please.
so the second would be from Alderman Sonoyka with show of hands. At this time, I'll ask the council if there's any discussion on this request in motion. Alderman Diastis, your hand is raised. The floor is yours for now.
Thank you. I'd like to know what questions there are that will force us to postpone this, number one. And number two, ask staff whether postponing this has any negative effect on the contract.
Alderman Bud Matts, if you can reply with some of your findings after reviewing this, that might help.
Sure. Yeah. It's just that we're talking about in the case of 15, we're talking about contingency funds. And it was our understanding when we were originally, we approved this back in 2018, that the contingency funds were not like to be spent freely, that they were for a contingency if there was some kind of an emergency. But it appears that the original contingency fund of $250,000 has shrunk to $50,000, meaning $200,000 of the contingency fund has been spent. Okay, so when I look through this this week's pay period, we've paid $5.6 million so far for the property, which is what we originally agreed to pay. And then there was a $250,000 contingency, and this is what we're currently being asked to fund $140,000 against. And so I think it's not unreasonable that in as much as we looked at what the expenditures were going to be for the budget and we knew what they were, if we're $200,000 quote unquote over budget, we should at least know what those expenses are for. And so I that's what I want to know, is what they're for, and get a listing of them and see if they're reasonable based on what's expected. In addition, the contractor says that they've already been paid 100% for their thing, including retainage on their construction management fee, yet they're looking for another $10,000 according to their AIA G703 form within the packet. So I don't understand why we're paying them $10,000 more than what they asked for, as well as paying them $10,000 over what they originally bid on fixing the site conditions. So I'm not in favor of spending $200,000 without an accounting for it.
Thank you, Alderman Bud Matts. I would agree with that. I hope the rest of the council sees an opportunity to evaluate this spending. Is there further question, Alderman Diastis, while you still have the floor after Alderman Bud Matts' explanation?
Yes, I'd like to know from staff if postponing this will have any negative repercussions.
Is there somebody from staff who can answer Alderman Diastis?
Well, I can jump in, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
This is Finance Director Melissa Gallagher. And considering this is the first that I've heard of this, other than just an email asking for contingency logs from Alderman Bud Matts, that was a lot to digest. And from the very beginning, from 2018, the contingency was always discussed in the process of the construction management of the project. And every single pay application shows the contingency adjustments plus the amount of the contract every single time. So to the point of the question back to how that affects the contract, that is something that I would defer to the city attorney, Attorney Wolf. But at the same point, that was a lot to digest without any information ahead of time, number one. And number two, if it needs to be a larger discussion, then I would suggest that something in the future in terms of a committee of the whole meeting. But that was just a lot to discuss all at once without, I wasn't even able to take all the notes. So I wanted to just answer the question, and if you had any other questions, we're happy to answer them.
Thank you. Alderman Bud Matts, can you explain the timeline in which you received this information, if this is so new, please?
Yeah, I asked yesterday morning for the logs on what the expenditures were for the contingency funds, and I received them at like 5:30, 6 o'clock tonight. So there really wasn't adequate time to look at it before the meeting.
Thank you. These are the themes that I think we've all on separate occasions brought up, the fact that we don't appreciate being rushed, and I think everyone appreciates not being rushed into that. I do see Alderman O'Brien's hand is raised, and Melissa Gallagher, I think is your hand still raised to participate, or is it just legacy?
No, happy to answer any questions, but Mr. Mayor, I would just add that if something is requested, it certainly is always provided. So we're just trying to assist where possible. Nothing has changed in terms of how the project has overall been administered. I just wanted to note that because everything has been running exactly as since 2018, since The first pay application was submitted to the city council. In addition to that, every single pay application then is reviewed by the city attorney as well. And the owner's sworn statement is prepared by the city attorney. And any questions ahead of time are always answered. In addition to that, the actual capital improvements committee has also reviewed different pieces along the way for the project. And I would also add that Chicago Title also is involved with the entire project. And just wanted to let you know. And if there's something that we can further provide, definitely. But again, I would defer to Attorney Wolf in terms of any contract issues if payments are deferred. Thank you.
Attorney Wolf, I'm not sure if you'll have the immediate answer right now, but if there's a way you could look into Alderman Diastis's question in the meantime, while I allow Alderman O'Brien to speak, if there's any implication to postponing payment, while I pull up an email about what contingency was defined as well. Attorney Wolf, is that possible to look into what impact there is while Alderman O'Brien speaks?
I don't believe the contract is attached to the packet. So at this time, I don't have access to the contract language, so I can't render any advice as to what impact that would have. So at this time, I wouldn't be able to do that unless I was forwarded the contract in the meantime, and I could review it as right now. But at this point, I don't have the contract to review.
Alderman O'Brien, your hand is raised.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And just a question, this might be more of a question for Finance Director Gallagher. Am I correct to, I do remember the information you pointed to, how we do get this update, is that we still, and it's probably just a point of clarification, that the guaranteed maximum price, or the GMP as referred to, includes the contingency. And if I was tracking right, we would still be about $40,000 or $50,000 under the guaranteed maximum price. I'm not objecting to wanting to know what the money's being spent on, but from the overall budget perspective, I guess my question is that the GMP, or the overall cost, maximum price, guarantee maximum price, includes the contingency funds, as well as, if my math was right, we're still running at about a $40,000 or $50,000 savings.
Yes, correct, Alderman O'Brien. Currently for the Algonquin station, it's $52,857,000 for the contingency, so that would be under budget by that amount. And based on through March 31st in this packet, the contingency for Hicks is $235,736 under budget for the Hicks station.
Great, thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it. That's all, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make sure I was tracking correctly on this side.
Thank you, Alderman O'Brien. Finance Director Gallagher or Attorney Wolf, I have put up on my screen from the Committee of the Whole agenda November 20th, 2018, and highlighted the paragraph about the contingency money and what it's set aside for to cover unexpected or unforeseen costs during the construction project. The city's requested changes, design modification changes, and allowed engineering, then the money is put into the contingency. In addition, if there are unforeseen items such as regulatory requirements from outside agencies, then the money from the contingency is used to cover those costs. Can we be certain this evening that the contingency Alderman Budmetz is speaking about went to cover those costs? Do we have any information on that?
Yes, you do. And Mr. Mayor, if I can just add to that, the contingency, again, as you're pointing out too, and I'm glad you pulled that up from November 2018. That, again, you described it exactly as that. A lot of the changes throughout the entire project was related to the permitting process, some outside agency pieces. It's all very detailed in a log. And it also, then there's supporting documentation with each and every single one. Every single contingency adjustment has been fully vetted through the fire chief process, through the entire staffing process, and also through all the permitting process. So there were adjustments, some to increase contingency, so further under budget, but there were some things that took away money for the contingency process. And that was because, you have things that you have to address in the permitting process. So the majority of that, I would say, would be permitting. There were some owner changes along the way to meet the specifications of the fire department and the fire chief. And those are the reasons why the contingency existed from the beginning, because if you recall back from November of 2018, the discussion was to not slow down the process, and that's the reason for the contingency. And then with these construction escrow payments that are presented to the city council for every single payment, all of those details then are shown, and for this packet, it's page 80, electronic page 80, and electronic page 88, that will show the actual reduction or increases to contingency with every single owner sworn statement. And again, that is reviewed by legal, and then it's also then fully approved by city council every single time there's a pay application, and then it's also then over to Chicago Title for release of funds. I would add to, again, I was just kind of jotting down information to kind of get answers to the council, but in terms of RC Wegman, the construction management fee did not change. The amount that was originally contracted for is the same amount. But again, we would verify everything to make sure, but I just wanted to make sure I got answers back to what your questions were. Thank you.
Thank you. And what I pull up on the screen was from City Manager Krumstock, emailed to the entire council yesterday afternoon on the 27th, a little bit before 1 p.m. But I would encourage the council take some time to pause on this. It was also discovered throughout the course of today that 14 of the subcontractors have been compensated more than what their estimates were. And normally it's trivial in the overages, but this is not trivial as well. And I think we should do some due diligence. Attorney Wolf, I see your hand is up.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to advise the council that with respect to any payment for goods or services, the Illinois Governmental Prompt Payment Act applies, and that law requires that payment be made within 30 days. If it's disapproved, there are certain procedures that the city council would have to undertake, but I just want to put the city council on notice of that 30-day time limit.
Thank you. So that 30 days, if we were to postpone from now until the next city council meeting, which would take place in May, I'm waiting for my calendar to pop up. That would be the second Tuesday on May 12th. We fall inside the time frame.
It looks like the invoice is dated April 16th.
Okay, so we'd be squeaking by, but we're still within the parameters. Further comments or questions? Alderman Budmats, this is going to be the last time for you, because I did ask you to speak to clarify for Alderman Diastis, but this is your second time here. Floor is yours. Unless that's legacy.
No. The only thing I can say is that the project itself is several months late, and the city, the council, when asked to extend the contract, did so at RC Wegmans at their request, and so even though the project came in late, I think it's at the end of the project for the first building, and we're nearing the end of the project for the second building. And so, in as much as I remember Alderman Cannon asking to be actively involved in and having an alderman on the committee that was reviewing the expenditures as they occurred, and we were told that that wasn't necessary. So I guess, like today, I'm looking at the thing for the Hicks Road, and the document that you show says that there's like in the packet showed there was like 250,000, if I remember right, or $260,000. I can look up the exact amount in contingency, but the document that I was afforded today, an hour ago, says there's only $175,000 in contingency. So, like in terms of 2 weeks, we've spent $75,000 in contingency money near the end of the project, or at least accounted for spending that money near the end of the project. So I guess, to me, this is a good time to get some last minute oversight before we pay the final bills on the project, because at this point, we've already paid RC Wegman the majority of their retainage and everything else. So I don't know, if we bear it along with them, I think that to get a little bit of accounting clarification really isn't that much to ask for.
Thank you, Alderman Budmats. Attorney Wolf, your hand is still up.
Sorry about that. It was just up from before.
That's okay. I can lower it for you. And then Finance Director Gallagher, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just would like to ask for clarity because I'm not sure that I understand the request of the Finance Department. So I just want to make sure that I'm very clear in what I'm to provide because I'm not sure that I understand what to provide. And I want to make sure it's clear to the entire City Council as well. And perhaps it's not me, perhaps it's the City Attorney or the City Manager or even the Fire Chief, or it's something different. And I just want to make sure that I'm understanding. It's not so much accounting functionality here. I believe that the work was done and now payment is being requested. These are bond payments that we will eventually replace the cash that we're spending now with bond funds. So I just want to make sure that it's very clear as to what I'm to provide by May 12th, or maybe even the committee of the whole meeting, if that's what it is. So I just want to make sure I'm very clear on what is requested of the Finance Department. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Budmats, can you clarify for Finance Director and for the Council what your expectations to see are in the meantime if we postpone this payment?
Well, now that I've seen the Excel spreadsheet that explains where the contingency funds have been added and subtracted, and I had a chance to briefly look at them, I would just look up for some of the backup documentation for those amounts. It's really not per se an accounting issue, is to try to understand what the pluses and the minuses were in terms of physically. I mean, the descriptions in some places says miscellaneous electrical for a couple $1,000s. So, I mean, to me, I'm an electrician. I'd love to know what miscellaneous electrical for $2,000 is. So I don't think it's something that you're going to be able to answer for me per se. It's more going to be able to go through in as much as the alderman had not participated in any of the meetings. This is basically we in the beginning we approved the budget for it, and now this is the chance to look at the things that weren't in the budget and to understand what those expenditures were before we approve them. So if nobody else seems to, if that's not a concern and that spending to the $200,000 is okay, then I guess we can just move ahead with it. But I wanted a little bit more detail on it, that's all. And it's really not an accounting form. It's more about the nuts and bolts of what we bought with that money.
It should be a concern. It's $200,000. It should be a concern. Alderman Veneziano, your hand is up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I was obviously not on the council when these fire stations were approved, but I was a resident, and this is a very controversial topic in our city, as we all know this as aldermen and women. And I think we need to do our due diligence before we approve payments, especially towards the end, to make sure that all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted, and that our money, what we're paying for is what we're getting, and that our contractor is being held accountable, because it's my tax money, it's your tax money, and I think our residents are owed that, and it's our obligation. And I'm sorry that it's kind of forthcoming here at just the meeting that staff is getting this notification, but I think for us to come back to residents and say, yes, I approve this bill payment, and this is why. To say, well, it was billed to us, we owe it, is not a valid reason, at least for me. So I think if we have those logs and the invoices and what the work was done and what it's for would be extremely helpful for me as an alderman.
Thank you, Alderman Veneziano. Alderman O'Brien, your hand's up. Second bite at this apple.
Thank you, sir. And I guess what I'm personally struggling with is, I think if we do request this, I'm not in favor of requesting this delay currently. Because it is a tough thing, we would have to, I think, ask staff to prioritize or help them with prioritization based on the other agenda topics. We deferred the payment for a road construction one prior to, so they're trying to make sure that didn't impede that contract. There's some additional discussion tonight where I'm imagining staff may have some other pressing tasks at hand for the emergency family relief funds. So I think my comfort level is I am okay with this. Reason being is that we have to entrust the staff that they're doing the work and doing their day-to-day jobs. If somebody showed me an invoice that said an extra 3,000 feet of electrical wire, I can't answer, maybe some of the fellow council members can. I can't answer if that's a realistic fee or not for building the fire station. So I don't feel comfortable myself from an expertise perspective, other than obviously Chief Moxley's involved and the engineers involved and Wegman. Those are the subject matter experts. I have enough faith to put in them as that is their expertise versus me looking at an invoice and says $3,000 for electrical wiring. I wouldn't be able to know if that's right or wrong. I have a trust factor that they're going to do their jobs as we've asked them to do. So I'm currently not in support of this just based on the discussion because it still is underneath the guaranteed maximum price that was set by prior council, as well as operating at a savings as well. So that's just my thought is I could look at the invoice, but I don't have the expertise to do that. That's where I would rely on staff too, but that's just my perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you for the clarity. Mayor, can I just ask
Yep,
and just
you're
add one more
next.
item? This is Finance Director Melissa Gallagher. Each one of the contingency items that have been adjusted, and to Alderman Budman's point, yes, the information that's in the packet is through March 31st. So that contingency again is a different amount. As far as that, those are decisions that were made by the fire department and also permitting all the way through. And so we might want to make sure that, number one, each one of those contingency items have been carefully logged with backup documentation. And what we can do probably is to make this efficient is get the information out. That's the other piece. What we may want to do is have, perhaps for a comfort level, maybe Alderman Budmats meet with the chief, because the chief is going to be able to describe contingency number 6, what this was intended for. Contingency number 10, why was this done? Rather than me sit down, that is not what I'm tasked with. So I just want to make sure that the right information gets to the right people. Certainly each contingency log, it's not a big ask at all. We can make sure that every single log that has, and they're all numbered. So it's real easy to pull all that data real quickly. I just want to make sure that we can offline then put, in touch with Alderman Budmats, with the chief, sit down, perhaps even with RC Wegman. I don't want to make any promises as far as timing and all that, but I would say that I think might be the best approach as a suggestion, Mayor, if I can interject and ask for that.
I think that's the only way to go, right, is to have Alderman Budmats sit with the chief, who is the acting project manager of this, and then of course discuss any disconnect with the general contractor. The question is now, if there's no further discussion, that we put it to the vote to ensure that council allows Alderman Budmats the opportunity to do this over $200,000. Is there any further comment or discussion on postponing this particular payment? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll to see it postponing this payment or pulling this payment out?
Budmats,
Yes.
O'Brien,
No.
Veneziano,
Yes.
Bessesi,
Sorry. No.
Diastis,
No.
Sunoika,
Yes.
Cannon,
No.
With 3 in favor and 4 opposed, this does not get pulled out. Going back to the original bills on warrant, are there any other items to discuss on this? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
O'Brien,
Yes.
Veneziano,
Yes.
Bessesi,
Yes.
Diastis,
Yes.
Sunoika,
No.
Cannon,
Yes.
Budmats,
No.
With 5 in favor and 2 opposed, the warrant is approved. This brings us now to the next item on the agenda, which is the consent resolution. It consists of 7 items, items E through K. By show of hand, does any alderman wish to remove any items from the consent agenda for resolutions? All right, bear with me now for a moment. Alderman Sonoyka, the
E,
item
please.
E. Alderman Veneziano,
IJK.
sounds like Wheel of Fortune. JK. And then we have Alderman Bud Matts,
H.
H. Oh, 5 out of the 7 have been pulled. So it's E, I, J, K. Okay. So that now brings it from 7 items down to F, G, let's see, right? F, G, E, H, I, J, K. Yeah, so that leaves F and G. So there's 2 items. The chair declares it in order for one motion to consider those 2 items without debate. Is there such a motion? Thank you, Alderman Bud Matts. Thank you, Alderman Diastis. So the first one is resolution number 20-R-44, approve a one-time bonus for the city manager's performance during 2019. And then G, G, resolution number 20-R-45, adopt a 2020 zoning map. The question is, shall those 2 resolutions be adopted? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Veneziano,
Yes.
Bessesi,
Yes.
Diastis,
Yes.
Sunoika,
Yes.
Cannon,
Yes.
Bud Matts,
Yes.
O'Brien.
Yes.
With 7 in favor and none opposed, those resolutions are adopted. And this circles us back now to the top of the list, starting with line item E, resolution number 20-R-43, to amend a resolution number 10-R-41 to adjust the policy guidelines for the Emergency Family Assistance Program. Alderman Sonoyka, can I have you make the motion and have someone else follow it up with a second? Thank you for the second, Alderman Veneziano. Alderman Sonoyka, the first bite's yours. Have at it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So at the Committee of the Whole, I requested that we remove the frequency limits on financial distributions, which are currently set at once per calendar year, that we remove financial caps on categories such as housing assistance, given that the average monthly rent payment is more than double the maximum distribution of the current program policy of $500, and increase overall funding to this program given the anticipated and growing need in our community. And I appreciate our resident from the 4th Ward that came forth and spoke on promoting those measures as well. However, after speaking with staff, these are items that we need to consider and compare in the context of our entire budget. So staff is continuing to update and work on the fiscal year 2020 initial estimates to be presented at the May 12th City Council meeting as a staff report. And at the May 19th Committee of the Whole meeting, the fiscal year 2020 initial estimates will be presented to the City Council for discussion. So at that time, I would expect city staff and the council to identify what we are capable of funding for the Emergency Temporary Family Assistance Fund and any other adjustments to the funding policy and fund administration at that time. Tonight, I would like to propose 2 changes in 2 motions regarding program eligibility. So after the Committee of the Whole last week, our city attorney looked into the legality of the citizenship requirement as a prerequisite to receive public aid. During her review, Attorney Wolf identified the Illinois Public Aid Code is applicable and essentially provides that both United States citizens and lawfully present non-citizens are eligible for cash or other public aid assistance. the Public Aid Code does allow units of local government that do not receive state funding to impose any citizenship requirement as allowed under the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act. And that act provides more restrictive eligibility requirements with respect to immigration and citizenship status. However, since the city of Rolling Meadows receives funding from the state of Illinois for various other programs, the city must abide by the same Illinois Public Aid Code eligibility requirements for public aid assistance with respect to citizenship and immigration status. So as such, it is the city attorney's recommendation that the city amend the policy guidelines for the city's Emergency Temporary Family Assistance Program to provide that an applicant be changed and defined as an individual who is a United States citizen or a lawfully present non-citizen as set forth in section 5/1-11 of the Illinois Public Aid Code, in addition to the Rolling Meadows residency requirement. As an alderman of a municipality, I do not have the ability to propose an amendment that removes these prerequisites and opens up this program to allow for direct distributions to any Rolling Meadows resident, regardless of immigration status. State and federal law restrict my ability to do so at this time. Therefore, I move to amend the policy guidelines for the Emergency Temporary Family Assistance Program as recommended by our city attorney to provide that an applicant is an individual who is a United States citizen or a lawfully present non-citizen as set forth in section 5/1-11 of the Illinois Public Aid Code and has maintained their principal domicile within the corporate limits of the city of Rolling Meadows for a continuous period of 6 months immediately preceding the request for assistance. This is my first motion. I will need a second.
Let me just unmute here, and I do see that you have a second by way of Alderman Veneziano. To that point, is there any discussion on this amendment Alderman Sonoyka is making? By show of hands, Alderman Budmats, do you have, okay. Alderman Diastis, your hand is up. Do you have discussion on this amendment item?
Yes. I am in agreement with what the attorney has proposed. I do have a question though. What about individuals with warrants or known criminals? Is that, do we want to let our taxpayers supplement these individuals as well, or can they, or do we want to exclude them?
Attorney Wolf, the floor is yours if you'd like.
Those are policy considerations that can be made by the city council, but those are separate from the citizenship requirements that are being addressed at this point. But Alderman Diastis, those are policy issues that can be considered and decided on by the city council.
Okay, so this is not the present time, but I would ask you, could you create some words for me so that we could add this to our ordinance?
Yes, I will be able to look into your inquiry, and when the policy is discussed further, you'll be able to have information in that regard so you can provide input on that issue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments, Alderman Diastis, or can I move on to Alderman Cannon?
No, please move on.
Okay. Alderman Cannon, the floor is yours if you want to unmute.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have another question for our attorney. A thought came up to me earlier today. I was wondering if we could include in this that the person has to have completed the census for this year.
I'm sorry, Alderman Cannon, I didn't know if you got cut off, but what I heard was that you wanted to know if we could include the requirement that the individual completed the census. That's another policy issue that I'd have to look into at this time. I think that census completion is a voluntary thing, so I don't know that it was obligatory, and you know, but again, I don't know if there is a prohibition from the council deciding that issue on a policy level, but I can look into that.
Okay, that would be helpful. I just think if we're going to be giving somebody money, I think that they should at least let us count them so we can get state and federal money for them. Thank you for looking into it.
Anything further, Alderman Cannon? Okay, I'll lower your hand. With that, is there any further discussion on Alderman Sunoika's motion with the amendments? Seeing no further hands for discussion, I'm going to put it to the clerk to call roll on this amendment.
Bessesi,
Yes.
Diastis,
Yes.
Sunoika,
Yes.
Cannon,
No.
Bud Matts,
Yes.
O'Brien,
Yes.
Veneziano,
Yes.
With 6 in favor and 1 opposed, those amendments are included. Alderman Sunoika, the floor is still yours because you said you had a second part to this now that this motion's over.
I do, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. Additionally, I would like to move to amend the policy guidelines for the Emergency Temporary Family Assistance Program to waive the continuous period of 6 months immediately preceding the request for assistance. And when the City Council declares a state of emergency, including this declared emergency. So this would effectively allow a resident that moved into the City of Rolling Meadows in February of this year and then lost their job in March to apply for temporary emergency financial assistance if needed. That would be my second motion, is to then waive that 6 months, again, when the City Council declares a state of emergency.
Noted. Is there a second to Alderman Sunoika's request to change the policy guidelines to waive the 6-month period? By show of hand, Alderman Veneziano provided the second. Is there any discussion on Alderman Sunoika's request to amend the policy guideline? Alderman Diastis, your hand is up. Floor is yours.
Thank you. I have issue with that because with no guidelines, an individual technically could rent a hotel room and then apply the next day for money. So I think the 6-month waiting period is fair and is effective. And I don't think that we should have no waiting period because of what I just said. In addition, if individuals that we wouldn't want in our city, once again, I'll talk to the criminals who could move into a hotel, rent a room for a week or less, and then apply. So I would be opposed to not having the 6-month waiting period.
Thank you. Anything further, Alderman Diastis?
Not at this present time.
Okay, Attorney Wolf, I see your hand is up. Floor is yours.
Thank you. I just want to make a statement with respect to the current policy. I believe that there is proof of residency required via a driver's license, voter registration, property lease, or mortgage, or other recognized source. So I just wanted to point that out, that the policy does state that as it's written right now to protect against that situation where someone would just be staying at a hotel. That wouldn't be a valid source of residency.
Thank you for the clarification on that. I hope that helps for you, Alderman Diastis. Alderman O'Brien, your hand is up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And that actually was a similar question that I had that Attorney Wolf just addressed. I guess my other question, that I am support of the waiving the 6-month residency thing as long as we can verify that it's, as Attorney Wolf just said. I guess my question is then back to Alderman Diastis, is before we vote on it, like, where do we insert those other requirements or stipulations? Like the one that was coming to mind to me is, I think there's a federal or state guideline or law, like for example, somebody that's in arrears for child custody, like they wouldn't be, or if they're on Chief Nowacki and there's a warrant out. like, where does that get inserted? Does that go to a committee of the whole discussion? Or, because if we approve this tonight, and again, I'm in favor, after Attorney Wolf just clarified for us, of waiving it when a state of emergency has been declared by the council. But I want to make sure that we do address at some point, if there is a warrant out for them, if they're in arrears for child support, the other guidelines that are in or could be in place where that gets inserted. Is that tonight in a different proposal, or is that at a committee of the whole? And that might be more for Attorney Wolf. I'm not sure.
Attorney Wolf, you can take the floor, but I believe it could be done either or. Somebody could make the request to amend it now. But Attorney Wolf?
Yeah, that's at the discretion of the council. It's my understanding that, you know, these are issues that may need further background information and education of the council and further discussion, but there's nothing stopping a city council member from making a motion to amend the policy now, because it is before the council at this time.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Attorney Wolf. That's all.
You're welcome. Alderman Diastis, I realize that I don't know if you were completely finished before I let Alderman O'Brien jump in. Do you have anything further after Attorney Wolf clarified your position?
Yes, I do. In the state of Illinois, if an individual resides at a hotel for 30 consecutive nights, they're considered a resident. So without having at least a 30-day stipulation on there, someone can check into a hotel, stay 30 consecutive nights, and they are considered a resident. And with that said, I would like to, I'm sure Attorney Wolf may want to say something, but either Alderman O'Brien or I would like to include an additional amendment as we move further.
Sure. We'll get this amendment finished up here, and then the floor can be yours if you want to create such amendments. While we're still on this current amendment for policy guidelines and 6-month period that Alderman Sunoika has placed before us, I see Alderman Budmatz's hand is raised. The floor is yours.
Question on the amendment. I thought I heard Alderman Sunoika say people who were residents of Rolling Meadows on the day that it was announced, the emergency was announced, which was February the 15th. So I don't think if somebody moved into a hotel room now, they could prove residency on February the 15th, or did I misunderstand what she was saying?
Alderman Sunoika, you can clarify if you'd like for the council.
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Alderman Budmatz, I am proposing that we include in the policy in this resolution, the amendment would be that the 6-month continuous residency requirement would be waived anytime the city council would declare a state of emergency. So that would include now, and it would include any time in the future. So for example, if there was a natural disaster or a tornado that left several individuals homeless due to damages, then we would still waive that right with the, we would still waive that requirement if we declare that state of emergency. So it would be inclusive of now and then going forward as well. Did that answer your question? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, when you gave your example, you said that, like the people moved in right before the state of an emergency was occurred. So I guess what I'm saying is, if they were a resident prior to the state of emergency being declared, then we wouldn't have to worry about carpetbaggers moving in after an emergency had been declared to get the funding. So I'm just suggesting that you make it that they're a resident in a state of emergency, at least prior to the declaration thereof, if they want to be eligible for funds as a resident.
That wasn't the original intent, but we can propose that if this fails, because in the situation, okay, I have a question for our parliamentarian, because before we began with the agenda items today, we had Maggie Trevor, who was an individual that was quite involved with this program, or had a family member that was quite involved with this program. I would like to make a motion to open up the floor to ask some questions regarding why that 6-month was included. Am I able to do that in this, or do I have to wait for this motion to clear?
I believe we have to wait for this motion to clear to then make a motion to open the floor. Attorney Wolf, is that? protocol?
I believe you're correct. I believe it would be out of order to have a motion to open up the floor at this time.
Very well. Then I will do my best to speak on the Trevor's behalf with this program. And from my understanding, the reason that those 6 months were in place before was to address some individuals. This was not widespread, but the situation that you're describing of anyone abusing or taking advantage of the program, and for there to be an easy way for the city to administratively deny programs for bad actors that were known throughout the community. That said, it's not like this is an automatic online form that people complete, and once they hit submit, they automatically receive funding. This is an intensive application process that is processed through the city and vetted accordingly. So if there were any individuals that were living in a hotel and we discovered that they're living in hotels everywhere and have driver's licenses that prove that they're living in hotels everywhere in their requirements, because there's multiple items that are required in the policy right now, including birth certificates. So if someone's willing to go through that amount of effort in order to receive a maximum of $500 for the year of 2020, then that's something that our current program administrator would have to verify and check with other welfare agencies. I believe the popularity of this program is not even that high. I think our program administrators on today, if they wanted to mention or clarify how popular this program is at this point.
And this is a good opportunity for staff who is familiar with this, our outreach coordinator, Natalia. If you do have information to share with the council, it might help inform our decision on making this adjustment. Natalia, are you on? Do you possibly have some insight for us?
Hi. Yes, I'm on.
Okay.
This program is administered by Joyce DeLeon. So it's not administered by me. I hope that's clear. What exactly did you want me to speak as to?
Alderman Sonoyka brought up something about participants. Alderman Sonoyka, I'll allow you to reframe the question back to Natalia.
Thank you.
Sure, this might be for Natalia, but this also might be for Ms. Joyce as well. We have looks like a chat here from Manager Krumstock, because my question was how popular this program is, and as Ms. Nieves explained, she does not administer this program at this time. So.
Okay, so then let's have Joyce, and maybe Natalia, you can share how many potential folks might use this policy later. Joyce, Ms. DeLeon, are you on? Is the program administrator?
I did do
Okay.
Thursday.
Thank you. We can hear you.
Oh, okay. You know what I did? I pulled 2009 after the housing crash, and we had about 2025. I thought you want to compare it to the last time where the economy was really tight. We had 2025.
It's good to know. Alderman Sonoyka, while you're framing this motion for the amendment, do you have additional concerns for Ms. DeLeon right now?
I don't have any concerns at this point, but I just want to make sure that Alderman Budmatz is, if he's going to then frame a motion to change the date so that the 6-month waiting period is waived for anyone that moves in after an emergency. Or I'm sorry, did I misunderstand that?
He just meant that it was a safeguard to control somebody moving in after the fact and establishing temporary or residency by being in a hotel for 30 days. If they weren't here prior to the declaration of the emergency, then it's essentially nullified as a resident because they were not fully established here by the date the emergency was declared, which was March 15th, I believe, 13th or 15th.
Thank you so much. So then my follow-up for Ms. DeLeon would be that during 2009, were any of the applicants individuals that were longstanding residents within the city of Rolling Meadows, or were those any individuals that had attempted to apply and were denied because they hadn't stayed or hadn't met that requirement, or anything of that nature that would help inform the amendment to waive this requirement of 6 months?
Not the 6-month requirement. No, that was easily fulfilled.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that. At this time, is there any alderman who has not brought up a point on this motion to amend the policy guidelines to waive the 6-month period? You can raise your hand now. Otherwise, we will put this to a vote. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Diastis,
No.
Sunoika,
Yes.
Cannon,
No.
Bud Matts,
No.
O'Brien,
Yes.
Veneziano,
Yes.
Bessesi,
Yes.
With 4 in favor and 3 opposed, this amendment to change the policy guidelines to waive the 6-month period is approved in here. Now we circle back to the original with amendments, unless there are other council members who have additional amendments they'd like to inject. Alderman Diastis, your hand is up. Floor is yours. Might be muted.
Thank you. There we go. I'd like to add another amendment that individuals with warrants and those that owe, I don't know how Alderman O'Brien phrased it. Did he say owed family support or children support? And I would ask Attorney Wolf, are there any other individuals along that line that we should eliminate? Again, individuals that have outstanding warrants and those that owe family support, I don't think they should be given resident taxpayer money when they're either. That's my motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a second? I see Alderman O'Brien's hand is the second on that. Is there further discussion to Alderman Diastis's motion to include warrants or owed child support as a factor? Alderman O'Brien, your hand is still up. Well, let me pause, Alderman O'Brien. Attorney Wolf, please take the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a need for clarification, and maybe I have to provide some legal guidance on the comment regarding warrants. Are we talking about warrants for arrest, Alderman Diastis?
Yes.
Okay, because that can be discriminatory on its impact. There's a lot of research that shows that an arrest does not, well, we all know that an arrest is not tantamount to a conviction. And there's research that shows that arrests can be, it can implicate specific classes more than others. So I would hesitate from passing anything that relates to warrants for arrest. I can tell you that the federal law prohibits SNAP benefits for those that are convicted of a felony conviction related to drug crimes. So I know that level of a conviction is allowable. But simply denying someone the benefit based upon an arrest could be discriminatory.
Okay, Attorney Wolf, I accept your comment and would say I would remove individuals with warrants, but insert what you just said about the felony convictions and those that still owe family or child support.
So his motion was amended. So do we have a second to his amended motion?
Okay, so can I get a second to his amended motion to remove warrants and replace with the language Attorney Wolf provided about felonies? Alderman O'Brien with the second. And then Alderman O'Brien, I owe you the floor now that Attorney Wolf is finished, and then Alderman Budmats.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And Attorney Wolf, that was just an example I was using, trying to kind of go off of what you did. And I'm completely in agreement with the felony conviction, if that's the wording we should use. I was just using the example because I think it's an Illinois state law too, potential, but would defer to you. Like just another example was if anybody's in arrears for child support. So I'm okay with that coming out. It is just something along those lines. And so I was just drafting some language here. And I know we have it in other ordinances, and I might look to Chief Nowacki for this, but is there a way that we can just say residents in good legal standing? Or does that put us into a box, or example being any felony convictions? Because I don't want a ton of staff time on this. So that might be a question for Chief. Chief, I'm guessing one of your officers can check in the database if there are any current felony convictions. Like it wouldn't be more than a 10 or 15 minute thing. That's what I was trying to get to, Mr. Mayor and Attorney Wolf, is it was just an example I believed was in state law, so we could cite that. But I'm completely comfortable with felony convictions and removing the child support. That was just an example that I was using.
Sure. Well, this is the motion that's out there right now, and maybe to Attorney Wolf's point, this is best that we revisit this sort of parameter setting in a committee of the whole. Like to Alderman Sonoyka's, we're very concise and pretty simplistic. I believe the road we're going down with Alderman Diastis and your second here can become a little bit more complex and might warrant a lot more dialogue. So,
Mr. Mayor, I don't agree with that, but I would not be comfortable then moving forward, as I had mentioned before. That's why I'd like to address these at the same time, because that was why I was comfortable with removing the 6-month waiting period if we would have these other safeguards in place. So that's the only reason I would ask that we move forward with this versus bouncing to a committee of the whole.
No, I'm not saying we don't. What I'm saying is let's just not use this time to try and generate the laundry list. Let's stick with what is in the motion right now, and then take the necessary action at a committee of the whole when we have that liberty.
So just to clarify then, so in the motion now would be felony convictions.
Felony and child support, yes.
Okay. And I don't know, Chief, is that something your officers have access to, or maybe it's for city staff, and I'm just assuming it's Chief? Like, is people in child arrears readily available, or is that a huge lift? I don't know. Again, I was just using that as an example where other government programs are contingent upon that. But if that's a huge lift and it's not easily accessible information, I'm okay with that not being in there.
To answer some of your questions, I would have to do a little bit more research on that. I know checking someone's criminal history, there are some specific regulations on who we could run the criminal history on, such as subjects we arrest or subject to a criminal investigation. But just to run an individual to obtain their criminal history for an application process, they would definitely need to sign releases and so forth in order for us to even do that. Okay. So I definitely would have to look into that subject. I know we just can't run someone just to check if they had any arrest, just unless they were arrested and we were looking to charge them with something. So there's definitely requirements from the federal government and the state on running criminal histories on individuals.
Thank you.
All set, Alderman O'Brien, or more
yes,
on
sir.
the floor?
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm set.
That's good. Attorney Wolf, I'm going to let you jump in and then circle back to Alderman Budmats.
I apologize again, Mayor. I had my hand raised from before, so no comments
No
at this time.
All right, then we'll go straight to Alderman Budmats. The floor is yours.
Okay, I heard a couple of different things when talking about child support. I heard owed child support, and then I heard an arrears in child support. And there's a big difference because there are a lot of people who owe child support on a regular basis versus people who are in arrears. And I can tell you that when I hire somebody, it usually takes about 3 to 4 weeks, maybe even longer, before we find out that we have to start removing child support from their check. And so this is not something that is just readily available. It takes the state about a month to process. if there's child support that even needs to be removed on a regular basis. Whether or not they're in arrears is secondary. So I think that if it takes that long to find that out from an employer standpoint, it would slow the process down in getting approvals to that same degree. And if we're trying to provide aid to somebody who needs it, to have them wait for a month while we figure out if they owe or if they're in arrears on child support, while those are valid concerns, I think trying to wait to find the answer from the governmental agencies that provide those answers could take a significant amount of time and defeat the purpose of what we're trying to accomplish.
Thank you, Alderman Budmats. Anything further? Okay, I will lower your hand and then move to Alderman Bessetti.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. One thing with the child support, I agree with Mr. Budmats that could be extremely time consuming. It also requires that that there's been a complaint and a lot of other things have happened before we would ever be able to detect something like that. So it to me, I would think that that's something that we may want to leave out unless there is an actual, I don't know, that's something more for a committee of the whole on that particular thing. I would be in support of the waiving the 6 months during emergency, as well as the felony conviction as a reason for denial. But I would not necessarily agree with the child support at this time without having further discussion.
Okay, thank you. And so to be clear right now, the motion is to amend this policy, the program, the Family Assistance Program, to utilize the language Attorney Wolf mentioned on felonies and verbatim from Alderman Diastis, child support owed. And so that's where we are. And then Alderman O'Brien, I'm not sure if this is the third time now.
No, I was just trying for efficiency. I was just trying to use as an example of something that's a current state law, so we wouldn't get into something possibly being in the gray area. It can be completely struck from the ordinance. It was just an example, so we wouldn't get into possible discrimination. And then Attorney Wolf cleared that up by going with the felony conviction route. So just for efficiency, we can completely take the child pay off of the table. I was trying to get that in before. That's all I was trying to say. It was just an example, so we weren't getting into that discriminatory area.
Okay, so then Alderman Diastis, would you, because this is your motion, would you make the motion to strike the child support owed and get a second on that?
Yes, I would.
Okay, and then Alderman O'Brien, you going to second that? Thank you. All right, so now we're just back with the language of the felony on this amendment here. Is there any further discussion on just the language provided by Attorney Wolf on the felony conviction? Alderman Sonoyka.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mm-hmm.
I want to state, because it sounds like this is coming from a place where Alderman Diastis believes that taxpayers should only pay for individuals that are upstanding citizens. And I want to remind him that his tax dollars also go to paying for prisons and also go to paying to feed prisoners and their health care within prison systems. So again, the purpose of this fund is for individuals that are in dire emergency financial straits. And so whether or not they have a felony conviction in their past from 20 years ago or 10 years ago or 5 years ago or yesterday, and they're out and they require assistance, it makes more sense for us as a city to participate in ensuring that they can adjust to society and not return. So I will be voting against this measure because I think it is counterproductive and to what we're trying to accomplish.
Thank you, Alderman Sonoyka. Manager Crumstock, your hand is up.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. I just want to throw this out and just to hopefully that we're not going to have a cow in this, but I would just put the comment that felonies, just like what has been mentioned, they should have a second strike because, again, maybe they had something, they're rehabilitated and out there. So the idea might be, yes, I do know what you're trying to say with felony, but maybe it goes back to manager discretion and the final review, because just like the criterias can be looked over, I think that felonies could also be, and then not being the court and legal and everything else, felonies run all different kinds of gambits. And at one point, marijuana was a felony up to a point. So I just give you that wording if you want to throw that in there, that maybe it's manager discretion. And I know what you're talking about, but second strikes and other pieces, everybody should have a second chance. That's it.
Thank you. Any further comments on this motion to amend with the language from Attorney Wolf on felony convictions? If not at this time, I'd like to have the deputy clerk call roll.
Sunoika,
No.
Cannon,
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a quick question? Could you just reiterate what we're voting on here? I'm just a little bit confused. Not a lot, but a little bit.
Sure. The motion that Alderman Diastis put forth after it was stricken and added is now back to just having some sort of parameters, as Attorney Wolf pointed out, around felony convictions being a factor in limiting somebody's ability to participate in this program. And that language, I would have to ask Attorney Wolf to reiterate, but it's basically any form of felony conviction in the record.
It was mimicking the restrictions that are provided in the federal law regarding these public aid benefits, and that law is the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act. And the specific felony conviction was related to drug-related offenses. So that excludes applicants for eligibility for public aid benefits under that federal law. So my felony conviction language was specifically related to drug offenses.
Okay, thank you for that. My vote is yes.
Bud Matts,
No.
O'Brien,
Yes.
Veneziano,
No.
Bessesi,
Yes.
Diastis.
Yes.
With 4 in favor and 3 opposed, that language is now incorporated. This brings us back to the original resolution with the 3 new amendments to it. Is there any further discussion? Alderman Budmats, your hand is up.
I don't know if this is the right time to bring this up, but I don't know if it needs to be an arm of this or a second program, but in my discussions with Ms. De Leon this week, it seems like there's been a limited use of this program in the last 3 to 4, maybe 5 years. However, in my discussions with Natalia Nieves this week, it seems like she has had multiple people who've been able to seek relief and quickly get assistance through applying to the Salvation Army. And she has referred many people, victims of crime, et cetera, in Rolling Meadows to them. So I think that something the city council should also consider, in addition to the program that we're operating, but it seems like with limited, I don't want to say success, but with limited public interaction, when our police department social worker is sending applicants and helping applicants get quicker relief from the Salvation Army, I think that we should look at or at least hear what Natalia Nieves has to say about that program. And if we can, my understanding is we can earmark funds through them only for Rolling Meadows residents. And so I don't know if this is the time to bring it up, or if I should bring that up under the good of the order, or matters not on the agenda. But to me, that seems like an effective way to quickly get money to residents who need it. And they have an application, which I believe was also forwarded to Manager Crumstock this week, But if we could hear from Natalia as to the benefits of that program and how it interacts with Rolling Meadows presently.
Attorney Wolf, as we're taking the time now to recraft this family assistance program policy here, does it make sense to do this while we're having it open, or do it on matters not on the agenda or some other time entirely?
It would have to be, the measure would have to be taken some other time. Right now, the city code provides that this program is administered by the city manager or his or her designee. So we can't change that without an ordinance change, and we don't have an ordinance on the agenda in this regard. What we're considering right now is a resolution regarding the policy. So this would be a matter that would have to be considered at another time.
Okay, Alderman Budmats, I hope that clarifies. It clarified for me.
Okay.
Thank you. And then Alderman Diastis, your hand is up. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I too am not sure if this is the appropriate time, but I would like to ask staff if they could please investigate what other opportunities are available with Elk Grove Township, Wheeling Township, Palatine Township, Schaumburg Township, Cook County, and the Red Cross. Our city is a part of each of these townships, and I'm under the impression that they each have something like this. So not a part of this resolution, but I would like staff to look into that. And I'd also ask if staff could check neighboring communities and see if they have a program that gives away money like this.
Thank you, Alderman Diastis. I'm sure staff will do that. I know the Northwest Municipal Conference has generated a laundry list of neighboring communities as part of their 65 municipalities that are members and what type of relief programs they're offering. And so I'm sure staff has a copy of that as well and wouldn't mind forwarding it to you regarding what relief and what updates and how they do that.
Thank you.
Yep. Alderman Cannon, your hand is up. And
thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I just would ask a couple of questions about procedure here, Mr. Mayor. So am I to take it we're going to have discussion about this at our next COW meeting? Is that my understanding? We're not going to approve anything tonight that's actually going to affect, are we?
yeah, I mean, we will be adopting this resolution by the end of this final vote after these 3 amendments have been incorporated. We can ask as a council at the next city council meeting or afterward, or matters not on the agenda this evening, to say, please put this program up on the next committee of the whole for refining, for investigation, for what have you. But right now, this resolution will be adopted if
Okay.
the council adopts it.
Okay, so a couple of points I'd like to just get clarification on then. So we're talking about adding a whole bunch of money to this fund that we don't have in there right now. And I guess I would like to hear from staff where the money's going to come from. The other question I would ask, I have a couple of questions, but I'll just ask 2 for right now. The other question I would ask, is this a one-time thing that we're going to fund, or is this going to be a program we're going to fund going forward forever?
City Manager Crumstock, as the director of this program or your designee.
So obviously, this funding continues at $5,000 in past budgets and everything else. I think the idea is to infuse this for a 1-year period unless the council decides to do it into another, but that's my understanding, that it's a 1-year infusion of additional money. And obviously, we have not talked about any of the money being transferred at this point in time, so it would come out of reserves. But at the past council meeting, Alderman Budmats did say, could we utilize some money from a different fund to take care of this? And that's part of what staff is looking at, but we need to know what number you're looking at. And tonight we heard the $100,000, but that's hopefully 2 of those answers that you're looking for.
Okay, thank you for that. I guess I would just throw this out here. Since this was brought up last week, I've had more than a handful of people call me and reach out to me not one of the residents was in favor of this because they feel like there's other programs available where people should be going first. They feel like there's a national program, there's a state program, there's a county program, plus the townships. I live in Palatine Township, so I know they have some funds that are available for things like this. So out of the handful of people I talked to, not one person was in support of this. That's just a comment in general. So I think everybody understands there's a great need out there.
Alderman Cannon, did we lose you? Alderman Cannon?
I'm done, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you. Alderman Bessetti, your hand is up. The floor is yours.
Okay. It sounds like we're going down that rabbit hole again here, and it's my understanding tonight we are taking no action whatsoever regarding how much is being funded, specific requirements other than the motion that we're talking about right now, or the what do I say? The topic of waiving the waiting period for the being able to be accepted for this, and changing the residency requirements to from being a U.S. citizen to including people who are here via any other legal means. So I think any discussion on anything other than that today needs to wait for another time. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Veneziano, your hand is raised.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would kind of second with Alderman Bessetti. I think we've kind of lost focus in the fact that we're just voting on passing this resolution and the amendments that were made, not looking to discuss money funding of this program. I'm hoping that will come back to us at a CAL meeting. And I too had, a couple residents reach out, and the fact that we would be taking their tax dollars and helping their fellow residents is exactly what they want their tax dollars used for, not other expenditures during their times of need. So I'm hoping that as council members, we don't lose sight of that. That's all I have for right now.
Thank you, Alderman Veneziano. I'm going to lower both yours and Alderman Bessetti's hand, and Alderman Budmatz. Believe that I don't know what track this is on now the final amended original here. So floor is yours.
I'm moving to call the motion to a vote and close debate.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second for that? Because I'm happy to go ahead and just ask to call roll now. Thank you, Alderman Bessetti. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Cannon,
No.
Budmatz,
I'm sorry, can you please repeat exactly what I'm voting on?
You're voting on resolution number 20-R-43, amend the resolution number 10-R-41 to adjust the policy guidelines for the emergency family assistance programs, including the 3 prior amendments that were made.
Yes.
O'Brien,
Yes.
Veneziano,
Yes.
Bessesi,
Yes.
Diastis,
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, is one of the amendments to waive the 6-month waiting period?
Correct. That was voted on already.
Then I vote no.
Sunoika,
Yes.
With 5 in favor and 2 opposed, this policy or family assistance program consent resolution is adopted. This brings us now to the the next one, which is letter H, resolution number 20-R-46, award a contract for 2020 sanitary sewer and storm sewer rehabilitation pipe lining. Alderman Budmats, you pulled this. Can I have a motion? And will somebody make a second to Alderman Budmats' motion? Thank you, Alderman Veneziano, for the second. Alderman Budmats, the floor is yours because you pulled this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I spoke with Director Horn this afternoon, trying to find out the necessity for spending this amount of money, $300,000 at this time, given the impending financial crisis that was anticipated, and asked him which part of this could be delayed, or could all of it be delayed. And his answer to me, and I'm not trying to put words in his mouth, so I'm happy to have him speak as well, was basically that the sanitary portion of this should not be delayed because we have an obligation to keep up with our system per the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, but that the storm sewer portion of this could be delayed for a year without a major problem to our system. So by doing so, we would save the spending of approximately $100,000 to $150,000. He was going to reissue an item on the agenda, and I think it came out around 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. So I haven't even seen the final number, but my understanding, so my motion is that we would only approve the portion for the sanitary sewer and not for the storm sewer at this time.
Is there a second to Alderman Budmats' motion to request paying only for the 2020 sanitary sewer and not the storm line at this time? By show of hand. Thank you, Alderman Veneziano. Is there any discussion on this adjustment to the 2020 sanitary sewer line only? Alderman Sonoyka, your hand, your floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to give the opportunity to Rob Horn to provide additional background on this item as well, in addition to Alderman Budmats' statements tonight, just because I know that there are a lot of items throughout here that were underlined essential throughout. Director Horn, did you want to speak on this item?
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Budmats hit on all the important points. The primary point is that we are required by the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District to perform a certain amount of maintenance on our sanitary system annually. While this doesn't meet that requirement fully, it is a good chunk of it, about 60%, the sanitary sewer. So again, the storm sewer work that we proposed is not mandated. However, the other work, I would consider mandated as it's required by another agency. The primary reason for this is to seal pipes from taking groundwater, which the residents ultimately end up paying for in their sanitary sewer bill when we have to treat rainwater. So that's why the sanitary portion of this agenda item is fairly critical.
Thank you, Director Horn. Alderman Sonoyka, anything further while you have the floor?
Yeah, yes. So I just wanted to, sorry, muted and unmuted. So I just wanted to then clarify that the items that we would be addressing are the critical items to ensure that service is still working. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. I see you're shaking your head. Shaking your head. Yes. No further items at this time.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Alderman O'Brien, then Alderman Bissessi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm guessing this point will carry for this one and the other two. I think it's J and K that might have been pulled too. Is as we talked about the last meeting, is I just want us to keep in mind that while it might save us $100,000 now, What staff, I believe is, and if Director Horn wants to add something here, they did have to go back to our business partner for the road resurfacing to see if, since we did delay payment on that or doing that, if it would increase the cost. So while I just want to, so it's on our minds that while if it would be pulled from this year, which I'm not in support of right now, I'm in support of going forward with this resolution, is that while it might save 100 now, next year, if we do it, it could cost 125,000. And I'm making up total numbers here, but that it does is that's what staff led us to last time when we approved the delay in the road resurfacing project, that contract generally probably wouldn't hold for more than 30 or 45 days. So since this money's already been allocated, it's in the budget that was already approved, kind of like all of our own personal budgets. The money is earmarked, so we might be saving 100 grand this year, but it's going to cost us an additional 15 or 25,000 next year.
If I can, Mayor.
Sure, Director Warren.
Thank you. Thank you, Alderman. Yes, the general requirements, or not requirements, conditions of these contracts that are the multi-year contracts done through the Municipal Partnering Initiative generally allow a increase annually to the contract. So to do this same work next year will for sure cost more, but to say it's going to cost 25,000, I think would be a little dramatic. It probably will cost anywhere from, I'm guessing, but between $3,000 and $7,000 more to do the same work.
Great. Thanks you, Mr. Horn, for confirming. Yeah, because mine was just a total guess. Mr. Mayor, that's all I had. Thank you.
Alderman Bessetti, your hand is up, then followed by Alderman Diastis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to second exactly what Mr. O'Brien said. That was exactly the thought that I had. I'm concerned about what it may cost in the future. And as we kick the can down the road, not only on this one, but especially on the one that we had last week, I'm very concerned at how much higher things may cost to do. Right now, we're in a period of time where costs are actually relatively low due to some of the material costs and stuff like that. So I'm not even convinced that when we come back on May 12th, that number that we had is going to be right anymore, because I very much believe that cost has gone up. So I don't want to see us moving things down the road where we have the funds allocated for it. And it's something that does need to be done at some time. So I would not be in favor of changing anything here.
Thank you, Alderman Bessetti. If you're finished, I'm going to call on Alderman Diastis, then Veneziano.
Okay, I'll be very quick. I agree with Alderman Bessetti and Alderman O'Brien. That's it.
Thank you. Alderman Veneziano.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for Alderman Sonoyka for pointing that out, that I did ask last week for staff to, start helping council with what is essential and what is not. And I did notice in the packet that every item was underlined essential. And I'm hoping that maybe in this next week, I can clarify with staff on what my intention was or what I was asking for. But on this topic, I agree with the other alderman that I think the sanitary sewer and storm sewer are essential to our infrastructure, and that pushing it down the line, it is going to cost us more money. I think there are other items on our agenda this evening that, I did pull that would be more appropriate in postponing versus, sanitary sewer and storm sewer. And so I am in favor of passing the resolution as it stood initially.
Thank you. Alderman Bessetti, I saw your hand was up. Second bite here. You're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One last point I wanted to make is should we pass the amendment, I would really not like to pass it unless we have an actual dollar amount of what we're saying, what that would be. Because the way the resolution is written right now, whether we take that out or not, we're approving $324,000. So, because these things are not itemized here that I see, unless I'm missing something.
So, Director Horn, I believe, had sent an email out. I don't know if it was to the whole council or to Alderman Budmetz with maybe some revised numbers. Is that true, Director Horn? That you
yes,
separate
Mayor.
the two?
Yes, Mayor. I can give you the exact number. If you approve the entire resolution, the total is listed on the memo, 324,000 and some odd change. If you remove the storm sewer through the amendment, the new contract amount would be $203,937.50. 203,937.50.
Thank you,
So
Director
basically
Horn.
120,500. Okay, different. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we are at the point here with Alderman Budmetz's request to remove the storm sewer from the rehabilitation of pipes being lined here, and that's what's on the floor for vote. So if there's no further comments, can I have the clerk call roll to remove the storm sewer from this resolution?
Budmetz,
Yes.
O'Brien,
No.
Veneziano,
No.
Bessesi,
No.
Diastis,
No.
Sunoika,
No.
Cannon,
No.
With 1 in favor and 6 opposed, that does not remove the storm sewer from this resolution. This brings us back to the original, which is awarding a contract for both sanitary and storm sewer pipe lining. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
O'Brien,
Yes.
Veneziano,
Yes.
Bessesi,
Yes.
Diastis,
Yes.
Sunoika,
Yes.
Cannon,
Yes.
Budmetz,
No.
With 6 in favor and 1 opposed, the resolution is adopted. This now brings us to the next item, line item I, resolution number 20-R-47, award a contract for the roof replacement on well house number 6, located at 1950 Gulf Road. Alderman Veneziano, you pulled this. Can I have you start with a motion? And can I have another council member follow up with a second? Thank you, Alderman Sonoyka. Leading the way in discussion, Alderman Veneziano, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So to Director Horn, obviously, I apologize for not sending you these questions in email earlier, but with this roof replacement, what is the reason, or is there a reason to believe that the roof would not sustain its integrity for another 6 months to a year, and or is there damages that we're unaware of that this would be a necessity to replace right now with not having our fiscal numbers that we've requested from staff for the COVID-19 impact?
Yes, Alderman Veneziano, I understand the question. The roof is not in good condition. It's over 30 years old, as you probably read in the memorandum. The primary reason is, as you know, the well houses are a redundant water supply for our system. If Jawa, our water supplier, was to have an issue, or the city were to have an issue with their water supply, right now we have a telemetry system, computer system, electronic system, and the actual well motor head that are in jeopardy because of the leaking in the roof. Now, that said, if it were to be delayed 6 months, you know, I can't say for certain that anything would go wrong. You know, we tried to build a plan where we have been trying to fix things that were neglected in the past and not repaired or replaced in the timeline that they should have been. And so we didn't want to do these all at once. So we've been trying to do one a year. I believe this is the last station that we have proposed. We have fixed the other ones in the 2 previous years. So again, you know, and that's why I listed it as essential, because it is part of our water supply system. That's all I have.
Thank you, Director Horn. Alderman Veneziano, does that satisfy your request?
Sorry, I thought I hit unmute. So just to sum up what Director Horn said, that it's your professional opinion that it's a necessity that we replace this roof now. Obviously, it's an integral part of our water system. I just want to be extremely clear on that. And if that is the case, then I'm all for, you know, passing the resolution.
Yes, Alderman, I wouldn't feel very comfortable with that roof going through the winter with the ice freezing on. It's a flat roof. I wouldn't feel comfortable going over the winter with that.
Thank you.
Any further comments for discussion right now from council member on this line item I, resolution number 20-R-47? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Veneziano,
Yes.
Bessesi,
Yes.
Diastis,
Yes.
Sunoika,
Yes.
Cannon,
Yes.
Bud Matts,
Yes.
O'Brien.
Yes.
With 7 in favor and nobody opposed, this resolution is also adopted. This brings us to the next line item J, resolution number 20-R-48. And that's to award a contract for professional engineering services for proposed drainage study in the Hicks Road, Kirchhoff Road area. Alderman Veneziano, if I could ask that you have a motion to move this resolution forward as you pulled it. Thank you. And is there a second to Alderman Veneziano's? Thank you, Alderman Bessesi. Alderman Veneziano, take the floor again with the first set of comments.
Thank you. So again, Director Horn, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this resolution came to fruition because council had directed staff for this study for the drainage at that intersection, mainly to give us some insight as to some solutions for the water, you know, drainage in that area. Is that correct?
Yes, you are correct, Alderman.
Okay, I thought that's what it was. With that being said, I know that we directed, or at least I know I was one of them that had asked for this. I think being that in our time of unprecedented times, that I would be in favor of postponing this study at a later time, because I don't think that even with the knowledge that we have of the drainage study, we don't have it in our budget to move forward on any solutions that they may come to us with. And by the time we would, the information that they give us may be outdated. And that would be my, I guess, assumption, and correct me if I'm wrong. You know, so I think it might be premature of us to have this study done at this time.
Yes, Alderman, you know, we simply, at council's direction, got these cost estimates. Quite honestly, this was the next meeting. You'll notice there isn't the word essential in the description, so I took your direction, but I did want to bring it to the council as directed, and obviously the council can vote as they choose.
Are you good, Alderman? Okay.
I'm good, thank you.
You're welcome. Alderman Cannon, your hand is up. Floor is
Thank you,
yours.
Mr. Mayor. I guess a quick question for Mr. Horn. I assume that this was going forward because this is in conjunction with our potential bike path along there. Will this jeopardize any of our funding for that we've got in line with municipal conference with it?
I don't believe we've secured any funding now. We are in the phase 1 design of that bike path. So as far as jeopardizing the bike path, it should not jeopardize that. You know, all it really would have done is given the engineer doing the phase 1 design some alternative information and potential land use. But as it exists right now, I don't think it would have a negative impact on the bike path at all.
Great, thank you for the information, and I'm fine with reducing this or getting it off the menu. Thanks.
Thank you. Alderman Budmats, your hand is up.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is to solve a verifiable flooding problem that exists right now. And the sidewalk along Hicks Road is unusable in the winter because it's covered with ice. Is that what we're talking about? Or is it only for the intersection down by Kirchhoff? Because I was under the understanding that this is solving also the flooding problem along the west side of Hicks, where it does continually flood.
Thank you, Alderman. So you're right on both counts. The phase 1 engineering design, IDOT will require a drainage study as part of that. However, in that drainage study, they only focus on the limits of the project. You'll notice from the memorandum how the red area encircles a larger watershed area. That's the difference between the two. So in regard to your concerns about the Hicks bike path or sidewalk that is underwater, again, this study, while it it almost overlays that area in their study, it would be counterproductive to redact that area from the study. So I guess that bike path area will be studied twice, once through the phase 1 engineering for the bike path, and once in conjunction with this overlay area and more of a drainage basin study.
And so is it safe to assume that it'll be at a much higher cost when we have a separate study for that purpose?
No, because the study for the phase 1 engineering, the drainage review, has already been approved by the council and is already underway. So I think that's already money that's been spent on that task. This was a more holistic view of the area, not specific to the sidewalk.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Alderman Budmats. If there are no further questions on this resolution number 20-R-48, I will allow the clerk to call roll.
The motion to postpone, right?
I'm sorry? Did I miss?
Motion to postpone, right?
No.
No.
Okay, never mind then.
Yeah, yes or no.
Yeah. Yeah,
no. Bessesi.
No.
Diastis.
Yes.
Sunoika.
No.
Cannon.
No.
Budmats.
Yes.
O'Brien.
No.
Veneziano.
No.
Mr. Mayor, I've made a mistake. I want to change my vote to no.
All right, so that makes 1 in favor and 6 opposed with a change in vote from Alderman Diastis. Unprecedented times indeed. All right, this brings us on to line item K, resolution number 20-R-49. Authorize a contract for the purchase of a 2020 Ford Transit, replacement of RM226/T362 2008 Ford F-250. Again, Alderman Veneziano, you pulled this, so I'd look for you for the motion, which I see, And if I can have somebody from the council second her motion. Thank you, Alderman O'Brien. Alderman Veneziano, please start the conversation. And we'll go
Thank
from there.
you. So again, Director Horn, it's a pattern, I think, at this point. So is this essential at this point that we purchase this vehicle? Is the vehicle that it's replacing, can it get us through, through the summer, to, the winter? What is, can you give us some more information on, this vehicle that it's replacing, and do we absolutely need this right now?
So, thank you, Alderman. I feel like I knew the question before it was asked. So I've been preparing an answer.
Thank you.
The issue is not so much that the vehicle could not last a year if it had to, okay? The bigger issue is over the last several years, we take great care with the Vehicle Replacement Committee in reviewing and considering vehicles for replacement and deferring those vehicles as necessary, while also trying to keep a balanced expenditure in the fund. What we don't want to end up with is not replacing any vehicles or equipment for like 2 years, and then everything going bad in that third year, and then not being able to defer any vehicles either. So again, this is one of those vehicles that we did not earmark for potential deferral. We are deferring several vehicles, and we do have a meeting with the city manager and finance director later this week to talk about vehicles and equipment. But this is a vehicle that serves the water division. Those employees, as you're well aware, usually work by themselves, so they don't group up in a vehicle. So this vehicle is, I'll just say it, very tired. Again, we have an outstanding mechanic division. They could keep it running for another year. I think the value of the vehicle would be reduced greatly, and we'd put ourselves in a position where we're having to replace too many vehicles in the upcoming years, which we probably, as might be discovered in the future, we might not want to put ourselves in that position.
Alderman Veneziano.
Thank you, Director Horn. I appreciate you preparing that and giving the explanation. So I will be voting in favor of it. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any further comments on this resolution number 20-R-49? More discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Diastis,
Yes.
Sunoika,
Yes.
Cannon,
Yes.
Budmats,
Yes.
O'Brien,
Yes.
Veneziano,
Yes.
Bessesi,
Yes.
That makes 7 in favor and none opposed, so that resolution is adopted. This now brings us on to other business and reports. So first section here we'll note is the mayor's appointments. Finance Director Gallagher has been appointed to the fire pension, reappointed to that fire pension, and she has done so by the fire pension and not the city council. And then you'll also see that now April and May are the months where we have other committees and commissions that require renewals or new appointments. And so you'll see a couple names on the list. The first one is Milton Buckingham. He reached out to me, and I believe there's information on the individual in the packet that gave some background. So for the sake of time and expedience, I hope you read all about it. So at this time, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve Milton Buckingham's appointment to the Planning and Zoning Commission. By show of hand. Thank you, Mr. Alderman O'Brien. Thank you, Alderman Sunoika. Is there any discussion on Mr. Buckingham? Alderman O'Brien, your hand's still up.
Nope, sorry. I was stretching.
Okay. All right, seeing no discussion, will the clerk please call the roll on Milton Buckingham's appointment?
Sonoyka,
Yes.
Cannon,
Yes.
Budmats,
Yes.
O'Brien,
Yes.
Veneziano,
Yes.
Bessesi,
Yes.
Diastis.
Yes.
With 7 in favor and none opposed, he is now appointed to the Planning and Zoning. You'll also notice another name on there, Mr. Hollish. He, at the 11th hour, actually asked to have his name withdrawn after the agenda was printed. So we'll pull that off. Again, unprecedented times. This leaves Suzanne Morrison. Again, background information is in the packet on Suzanne. She is a licensed engineer. I would like a motion to approve her appointment. Thank you, Alderman Veneziano. Thank you, Alderman Sonoyka, for the second. Is there any discussion on Suzanne Morrison's appointment to Planning and Zoning? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Cannon,
Yes.
Budmats,
Yes.
O'Brien,
Yes.
Veneziano,
Yes.
Bessesi,
Yes.
Diastis,
Yes.
Sonoyka.
Yes.
Wonderful. With 7 in favor and none opposed, Suzanne Morrison is also appointed to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Moving on there, we have a couple appointments for the Economic Development Committee. The first one beginning with Roberta Marcinkus, and she is a local business owner of more than 30 years in Rolling Meadows, in addition to being a resident. Is there a motion to appoint Miss Roberta to the EDC? Thank you, Alderman Cannon. Thank you, Alderman Budmats. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Budmats,
Yes.
O'Brien,
Yes.
Veneziano,
Yes.
Bessesi,
Yes.
Diastis,
Yes.
Sonoyka,
Yes.
Cannon.
Yes.
With 7 in favor and unopposed, Roberta is now appointed to the EDC. This leaves 2 other ones, starting in the first order, Alderman O'Brien for the Economic Development Committee. And there's background in there on him, but again, it goes back to having multiple council members involved in the EDC to keep the communication moving from the Economic Development Committee onto the city's council, and also doing this with some understanding of election cycles and continuity beyond this next election cycle. So to that point, is there a motion to appoint Alderman O'Brien to the EDC? Thanks, Alderman Diastis. Thank you, Alderman Veneziano. Is there any discussion on Alderman O'Brien's appointment to the EDC? Alderman O'Brien?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to, based on our conversation I had, and I haven't had a chance to talk to the other council members, I really do appreciate and honored to ask to be appointed to here. In talking to Mayor Gallo about the appointment, as everybody does know, I do travel for work professional reasons. While I don't see that getting back to normal anytime in the near future, given the COVID, but I did discuss with Mayor Gallo that assuming by next year, travel will be back. So just in full transparency, as always, I'm honored to be there. I will make every meeting that I can, but as you do consider Mayor Gallo's appointment request is, I deemed, and this is why I let the mayor know, I deem my responsibility primarily being our city council meetings like tonight, as well as the committee of the whole. So if there is a chance that I might miss a meeting, I would probably have it fall on the Economic Development Committee if I had that flexibility in my travel schedule. I don't see that again this year based on the COVID-19 and travel restrictions across the country. But just in full transparency, as you consider my appointment, just wanted to be upfront about that, is that my priority is on the committee of the whole and council. So if I do have to miss a meeting, it might be the Economic Development one. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Appreciate your transparency. That's why we have safeguards for the next one, which is Alderman Veneziano, right? And prior to getting into that, let's go ahead and cast the vote.
Okay, O'Brien.
I'm going to abstain from this one. Thank you.
Okay, that's what I thought. Veneziano,
Yes.
Bessesi,
Yep.
Diastis,
Yes.
Sonoyka,
Yep.
Cannon.
Yes, but he has to grow hair.
Bud Matts,
Yes.
That makes 6 in favor and 1 abstention. Welcome to the EDC, Alderman O'Brien. The next one is Alderman Veneziano, again for continuity of communication. Not that the chairman isn't responsible from the EDC to bring information to the city council, but we will have another alderman available for this line of communication. Is there a motion to appoint Alderman Veneziano? Thank you, Alderman O'Brien. Thank you, Alderman Budmats. Is there any discussion on Alderman Veneziano's appointment? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Veneziano,
I will abstain.
Bessesi,
Yes.
Diastis,
Sure.
Sunoika,
Yes.
Cannon,
Yes.
Bud Matts,
Yes.
O'Brien,
Oops, yes.
With
I was
6
talking to
in-
myself. I was having a good conversation.
With 6 in favor and 1 abstention, Alderman Veneziano is on the committee, Economic Development Committee. This brings us to the next series of line items. It's also a series of proclamations. This week happens to be the 51st Annual Municipal Clerks Week, whereas the Office of the Municipal Clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world, and the Office of the Municipal Clerk is the oldest among public servants, and the Office of the Municipal Clerk provides the professional link between the citizens and governing bodies and agencies of government at all levels. Municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality. They're rendering equal services to all. Municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs on the Office of the Municipal Clerk through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, and the annual meetings of their state, provincial, county, and international professional organizations. It is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of the Office of the Municipal Clerk. Now, therefore, I, Joe Gallo, Mayor of the City of Rolling Meadows, do recognize the week of May 3rd through May 9th, 2020 as Municipal Clerks Week, and further extend appreciation to our Deputy City Clerk, Judy Brose. Thank you for all that you do, truly appreciate it. To all municipal clerks for their vital services that they perform and their exemplary dedication to the communities that they represent and serve. Given under my hand and seal of the City of Rolling Meadows of Illinois, this 28th day of April 2020, I will sign off on this proclamation for the 51st Annual Municipal Clerks Week. Thank you, Judy, for your efforts. That then brings us to the next proclamation. Here we go, Rob, you're turning red. You're on camera. Spotlight's on you. So this proclamation is for Building Safety Month, and we should have all received an attachment on the Building Safety Month proclamation, where the Community Development Division of Public Works is committed to ensuring that buildings and building projects are safe and built in compliance with all national, state, and local fire codes. The devoted trained professionals of the division are the designated guardians for the City of Rolling Meadows, who work with homeowners, builders, architects, engineers, and tradespeople on a daily basis to ensure that plans, materials, and workmanship are all completed to a minimum standard established, and to protect property owners against questionable workmanship. Whereas the City of Rolling Meadows is committed to recognizing that our growth and strength depends on our safety and economic value for the homes that we have, our buildings and infrastructure that serve our citizens both in everyday life and in the times of natural disasters. Our confidence in our structural integrity of these buildings make up our community, and it's achieved through the devotion of vigilant guardians of building safety and fire prevention officials, architects, engineers, builders, tradespeople, design professionals, laborers, plumbers, and all the others in the construction industry who work year-round to ensure the safe construction of buildings in our community. Our communities benefit economically and technologically from using modern and up-to-date codes and standards, including the international codes, which are the most widely adopted building safety and fire prevention codes in the world. These modern building codes include safeguards to protect the public from natural disasters such as hurricanes, snowstorms in our case, tornadoes in our case, wildland fires, floods, earthquakes, which, according to a study by the U.S. National Institute of Building Sciences, provide $11 in future mitigation costs for every dollar invested. Building Safety Month is sponsored by the International Code Council to remind the public about the critical role of our community's largely unknown protectors of public safety, our local code officials, who assure us safe, efficient, and livable buildings that are essential to our prosperity. Each year, in observance of Building Safety Month, citizens worldwide are asked to consider the commitment to improve building safety and economic investment at home and in the community, and to acknowledge the essential services provided to all of us by building departments, fire prevention bureaus, and other agencies in protecting the lives and property. Now, therefore, I, Joe Gallo, Mayor of the City of Rolling Meadows, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2020 as Building Safety Month. Accordingly, I encourage our citizens to join with their communities in participation in Building Safety Month activities. The clerks get a week and you building guys get a month. Congrats. Thank you. Thanks, Rob, for all you guys do. This brings us now to the next series of items, which are clerk's report. Is there anything for the clerk to report?
There's nothing.
Okay, thank you, Judy. City staff reports, community items of interest. Let's go ahead and see what we have to offer here as my computer freezes.
Mayor, I can actually start if you would like me to.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm waiting for my computer to unfreeze on my other monitor. Take it away.
So thank you, Mayor and City Council. Obviously, I'll make these topics to mention as brief as I can, but I do have some add-ons. We do want to mention to the community that the mobile food pantry will continue on Fridays all the way through May. We did send out obviously an announcement on that with the flyers. So please check the website if you want additional information. Really quickly, we do want to make sure that people know that the refuse and recycling guidelines are out there. And if you have any concerns about anything that you have, please throw it out in the garbage, not in your recycling. And especially during this time, please place in the garbage the morning at 6 a.m., double bags, smelly bags, and then spray bags with Windex or ammonia if you have a concern. But if you have any gloves or mask or anything else, do not place it in your recycling bin. Please place all those items into your trash double bagged. We really want everybody to stay safe and healthy, but also please maintain social distancing. We also want to remind people, please do not wash or flush down wipes down the toilet. We still have issues where this is being down. Thank you for the sanitary sewers, but again, we do continue seeing flushing of wipes, and we do want to make sure that people know, even though they say disposable, sometimes they do have issues. So please use your trash receptacles the best that you can. We also want to mention, as of April 20th, these were the numbers that we have. We do have the U.S. Census going on. Rolling Meadows is doing a great job at this point in time from those numbers. Our response time rate was at 62.4. We are outpacing the state of Illinois at 55.7. But again, we do need higher numbers, and we do need to make sure. So you see your neighbors, you see friends, you see family, please tell them complete the census. It's very important for the state and also the city of Rolling Meadows. They did extend the date for response, but you'll keep on hearing this as we continue going on. A reminder that the IRS has announced that federal income tax filing date has been extended to July 15th, and obviously the state of Illinois is also using July 15th. A friendly reminder for residents and businesses, if you're having a hard time paying your utility bill or your food and beverage payments or any of those kind of things that come into finance, please contact finance at 847-394-8500 or email finance@cityrm.org, and then they will be able to put you on a payment plan. We do want to mention, and we keep on doing this, that please shop Rolling Meadows. It's important. It's more important than ever. But again, please shop Rolling Meadows. And I do want to thank the Complete Count 2020 census group. They allowed us to use some of the grant money so we could actually put out census information and also make sure that people could see the 2 signs that we're putting out when people allow us and businesses allow us that we are open, and then that there are deliveries of food and actually this side for restaurants. So we do have 2 signs out there. If you know of anybody who's looking for any of those signs, it would be greatly appreciated. Let us know. Over 50 signs have already been distributed by business advocate Martha Corner, and obviously anybody who wants one, we just want to make sure that everybody knows we're open for business. Obviously, what we want to also mention is that the committees, because this is the last meeting of the month, the committees just mentioned, Economic Development Committee will not be meeting, and the Planning and Zoning will be meeting remotely for a very short period of time, really to open it up and then just do some quick business and then close it down and choose another date. Obviously, with Planning and Zoning, you have to be for the public, but also some of the other pieces that need to be transparent and some of the other items. We do want to mention that the street program that was postponed at the meeting, we will be putting it back onto the agenda. Obviously, the motion was until the governor had a resolution, if it was not for 30 days or something like that. But we believe that we need to bring it back for that next meeting. I would actually ask if anybody feels differently, please contact me. But again, how the motion was made, and it wasn't date specific, it was more timing specific. And I think that we can do that at that point in time. But during this week, next week, before we finalize, if you have any concerns, please let me know. But I think we do need to bring back the street program at that point. The final item that I do want to mention, and actually this gives Rob a little time to unmute because we know how he is in the mute. We do want to mention happy retirement to Community Development Building Inspector Vince Glasgow. Friday is his last day with the City of Rolling Meadows. We do appreciate all that he has done. We hope that it's a long and happy retirement. And obviously with that, hopefully by now Rob's muted if he would like to say more.
Yes, Mayor, if I could just say a few prepared words. As a result of the extended shelter-in-place order, we were unable to celebrate a retirement for Vince in the fashion we normally would. I would like to take a moment to recognize the ending of a career for a longtime employee. Vince Glasgow started his career with the city in January of 1984 as a property maintenance inspector. He has devoted over 36 years of his life to the service of others, dedicated to protecting the health, safety, and welfare of thousands of residents and business owners who have made Rolling Meadows their home. What most of you probably don't know is that in 1987, while on duty performing inspections, Vince rescued a woman from drowning in a flooded retention area in the city when he dove into the water and rescued her from her car. While that is certainly impressive, we need to consider the thousands of residents, visitors, and business people whose lives have been protected over those years through Vince's diligent enforcement of the city's adopted building codes. This type of dedication to others and to one organization is not necessarily in vogue in today's world, but the resolve needed to spend an entire career dedicated to the service of others is something that merits our appreciation and our respect. I've never liked the word retirement because retirement generally means the end of a career. Instead, I would ask everyone to join me in wishing Vince the best of luck as he embarks on the next stage of his life, whatever that may be. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Are there any further community items of interest, Manager Comstock, or can I move on to first quarter financials with Finance Director Gallagher?
Please move on. We're past 10.
All right, so Finance Director Gallagher, the floor is yours for first quarter financials.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the packet tonight is the fiscal year 2020 first quarter financial statements unaudited for results of operations as of March 31st, 2020. It does represent 25% of the fiscal year so far. And as we note, it is unaudited. The report is a result of our operations and is not intended to be a financial estimate. All reports are reported and presented on a cash basis, meaning that some of the revenues received and expenditures incurred are attributed to a previous fiscal year. So as we're looking ahead to May 12th, as we have mentioned, We will be continuing to update initial estimates, and that will be presented at the May 12th City Council meeting. Reserves are the cornerstone of financial flexibility, and we will continue to monitor that over the upcoming months and into next year as well, and as we prepare for the 2021 budget. What this report does, though, is report on the first quarter financial statement. I would want to also remind you, too, that we're looking at all of revenues and expenditures. And as a reminder, the city's FY 2019 audit will be presented at the June 16th Committee of the Whole meeting. Our city auditors will be present to present the city audit. This report does consist primarily of the general fund. As a reminder, it is the largest operating fund for the city. The statement, the income statement, and year-to-date available budget report, year-to-date revenue detail report, and the major revenue charts all show highly detailed notes in the report. And we wanted to just cover that on a high level and present a couple of items. What I wanted to first present is our general fund revenues and expenditures. As a reminder, it's the 25% of the year so far, year to date. And as our 2020 budget was adopted, we did have a deficit position, meaning revenues did not outpace expenditures. So we had it budgeted at a deficit of $1.3 million. 2020 year to date through March 31st, we have revenues coming in at 11.7 million and expenditures coming in at 10.9 million. So it's actually trending better than budget right now at a surplus of $837,272. What this means is that year to date for revenues, we have 35% of our revenues coming in and 31% of our expenditures. I do want to comment just real quickly on revenues in that, as we know, a lot of the revenues that we received through the first quarter are attributed back to the 2019 audit. When we move ahead and we start estimating, we will have to look at all of that and back some of that out so that you will have a clean picture. But I'm just kind of mentioning right now, just to always remember that a lot of our major revenues are about 2 months behind. But with that being said, our revenues coming in are primarily attributed to our property tax levy, which is about 50% that you would expect through the March time period. And we did receive 50% of the property tax levy. And as a reminder, the property tax levy is 36% of the city's general fund revenues. We also noted, and it's also in the detailed itemized look of the income statement for the general fund, but the video gaming revenues were on track to exceed prior to the COVID-19 stay-at-home order. So the revenues coming in were approximately 65%. Also remember that for revenues in the general fund, July 1st marijuana sales will be taxed by the city, and this revenue will help the city overall. In addition of note, the local use tax is trending higher, and that is due to the fact that online sales are increasing as well. And it is a relatively new component of the overall tax to the city by state law. For total general fund expenditures, we're about 6% above budget, and that's what you would expect also because the fact that you have your property tax revenues coming in, but then there's a corresponding expense side in your expenditures for your pension funds. And then also as a reminder that our fire chief did retire in March 2020, and those are also shown in the first quarter financials. For the following transfers on page 2 of the memo, we have interfund transfers that were completed as part of the 2020 budget, and those are detailed out. Those were completed in the first quarter. I did want to mention overall, in terms of the general fund on page 4, a chart that we did add to this is so that you can see the dollar percentage coming in as percent of budget, so that you can see overall, and we'll continue those types of charts to help you as well. The detailed notes are in alignment in terms of all of the items within the detailed income statement, and I won't go through those because I did highlight that. But I did want to move overall in terms of the general fund and looking at that. We will be looking in detail, as I mentioned, as far as revenues and expenditures, and also stress testing as we move ahead. But for first quarter, again, 35% of budget year to date for revenues, and for the general fund, 31% overall. Moving on overall into the all funds income statement, which is on page 9 of your the financial report. we do show all of the funds by fund number, by fund type, revenues and expenditures, and then also percent of the year-to-date budget with some additional notes onto the side. Within the memo itself, we do also show you the fund structure, which we'll go into a little bit more in depth at a later point. But it's good to know what the governmental funds are, the enterprise and the internal service funds are for the city. We also have a cash and investment statement, and all in coming in from March 31st is 23.7 million as far as overall cash position for the city. I do want to highlight that a lot of the internal service funds are shown cash position, and just remember too that we have the bond money that's included in that, and that will be depleted because of the fact that we're now paying down the final bond proceeds. And within the packet, starting on page 11 of the financial report, we do show the larger picture of the sales tax, starting with sales tax, moving through all the major revenues for the general fund. And why this is important is just looking over the trend line data and some of the things that we've looked at in the past, which will be helpful and as we move ahead and looking at that. We were in a relatively sound position in that even through the end of March, revenues were coming in overall as they should. However, this is just the first quarter look, and I don't want to leave anything as far as an overall summary, except for that is just the first quarter of operations, and leave it at that for now. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Finance Director Gallagher. I appreciate it. Barry, I wasn't aware we had a curfew at 10 o'clock, but if you want, we can continue here with March 2020 new business. And you are on mute. I had to remute from back.
Now I'm unmuted. Actually, two parts. I just want to mention that we do have the operational COVID-19 response. It's the update that we've been putting out there so people know. And then obviously what Mayor Gallo mentioned is the last thing is that we didn't have any new business licenses in the month of March. We did have some business license compliance going on, but with that, that's really the quick update just to keep things moving along. And again, the COVID-19 report is in there and some of the other pieces.
Yeah, you know what, Finance Director Gallagher, do you want to touch on the COVID-19 operations update?
Sure, Mr. Mayor. I want to be mindful of everyone's time. COVID-19 response, it is a staff report in the packet. And really what's new in this is all I wanted to highlight. Again, City Hall is temporarily closed. Keep us as a resource in case you do hear from residents, restaurants, businesses who need assistance. But on page 2 of that, there is an insert that we're putting with the May 1st utility bills. That is a third of a page buck slip that talks about the different payment options for utility billing. And we are working with residents actively, but there were lots of questions that came in from residents, and we wanted to make sure that they understood that we are still continuing to suspend late fees. And then also there are payment options as far as partial payment options. And then also we've had a number of folks call in and asking us if they could make their water bill payments with their unemployment benefits. And so we wanted to make sure that information came out there. And really that's all that's of note to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Then this brings us now to matters not on the agenda, since Manager Crumstock mentioned the brief 2020 new businesses, which isn't very many because of the pandemic. Are there matters by show of hands? I see quite a few here. Let's start with Alderman Cannon first on the list. On mute.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of quick questions I would ask. So I saw that we saw the new committee members being put on board today. Is it my understanding then we're still too short on economic development?
Yeah, I have additional names on the list that I will be bringing forth going forward. Yep.
Same thing with planning and zoning. We're short 1 or 2 now?
Yep.
Okay. I guess the other question I would ask Mr. Mayor, since you had a handle out of this stuff, I know we had a major change in people who were on the committees before who are no longer there, which is fine. That's all your prerogative. I would hope, though, that we're sending out some kind of a professional letter thanking the people who spent all their years on those committees for the service they provided the city. I think a lot of those people have been on there for a long time. And I think it would just be nice if we had some kind of a formal thank you to them since they get paid nothing.
Thank you.
I guess the other question I would just ask about, as of May 1st, the governor has said everybody needs to wear a mask outside. I know that probably doesn't bother some people, but to me, it's very important. And I know my wife was out shopping at Jewel the other day and said probably half to 2/3 of the people in the store had no mask on. I think people, if you know anybody who's got the virus, it's really serious stuff. And some of us who have compromised immune systems, it's critical. I wish the city would put it on our TV channel and make a better emphasis to make sure people wear their mask when they're outside. It's really important to some of us. Thank you.
Thank you. I do see Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make this real brief. Based on a couple of residential inquiries, I was wondering on the committee of the whole meeting for May, if we could discuss the outdoor ordinance for smoking in outdoor public spaces. And they also did send a note that knowing that the gaming's on committee of the whole, and it looks like we'll be talking about the emergency assistant on the committee of the whole, completely fine if this gets deferred to June. It was just a request that they had talked to me about earlier this month, we talked about maybe getting on the May committee of the whole agenda, but based on other competing priorities, this one is not probably as high as the gaming or the emergency assistance fund. So deferring to June would also be at your discretion, Mayor, as you develop that agenda.
Thank you, Alderman O'Brien. I'll work with City Manager Krumstock, who develops the agenda, and we'll see what happens with that. Thank you for offering that. Alderman Veneziano.
Oh, thank you. So I just wanted to share again, NCH is asking and accepting supply donations for PPE, personal protective equipment. So any local businesses that have any that would be willing to donate. And they're also accepting hand-sewn masks. You can contact supplydonation@nch.org or call 847-618-0252. These essential workers really need this PPE. This pandemic is far from being over, and our supplies will be diminished quickly. And we do need this PPE in order to, care for sick patients. So I implore you to please, while you're sitting at home, get crafty and make some face masks if you can. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Veneziano. Alderman Sunoika, you're up.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to confirm that the Emergency Temporary Family Assistance Program will also be an item on the Committee of the Whole in May.
Thank you. Yes, so we know that that might be competing with gambling and the smoking ordinance, but Alderman O'Brien has kindly allowed us to push out the smoking subject in order to make way for the Family Assistance Program, which I do think takes a pivotal role here in being more prominent. So you're correct.
Thanks, team.
Thank you. Are there any other matters not on the agenda from anyone else here? If not, there is a request to go into closed session, and it does require a motion along with a roll call vote. We have to go into closed session to review closed session minutes according to 5 ILCS 120/2C21 of the Illinois Opens Meeting Act, as well as discussing personnel 5 ILCS 120/2C1 of the Illinois Open Meeting Act. Do I have a motion to move into closed session? Thank you, Alderman Sunoika, for the first. Thank you, Alderman O'Brien, for the second. Is there any discussion on this? By lowering the hands, I don't see any discussion. Okay, Alderman Budmets is gone. So with that, will the clerk please call the roll?
Bessesi.
Yes.
Diastis.
Yes.
Sunoika.
Yes.
Cannon.
Yes.
Budmats.
Yes.
O'Brien.
Yes.
Veneziano.
Yes.
With 7 in favor and none opposed, we will now enter into closed session via another web bridge, which is only available to the conference, city council members, and the city attorney. The audience and press are advised that we do not anticipate taking any action coming back to this bridge. So I wish you all a good evening. And council members, I'll see you on the other bridge. I'm going to take a quick 2-minute break to grab another water. Take care, everybody. Thank you.